One of the most remote nations on Earth, threatened by rising water levels, has today experienced the damaging impact of what's known as a king tide. Tuvalu is a small group of islands 10,000 miles and 11 time zones away in the South Pacific. Islanders fear that the area could disappear within 50 years if action isn't taken over climate change. Well, our environment correspondent, David Shookman, has travelled to the islands, and we can join David there now.
Hugh, thank you. It's a stormy time here in the heat of the South Pacific, just the combination of high tides and strong winds that people dread. Because Tuvalu is so low in the water, it really does run the risk of becoming the first country to fall victim to the way our climate is now changing.
Incredibly beautiful, but incredibly vulnerable. The fragile strips of green that make up this country only just break the surface of the ocean. But for how much longer? The mighty waves of the Pacific pound the shoreline during what's called a king tide, the highest tides of the year, and the effects can be devastating. This is the island's main road.
I mean, we've never seen this in the past, water coming all the way up to this far. And our house is just up behind us.
But the water also surges up from underground, through the coral the islands are built on. In the space of an hour, the lowest areas are all flooded. Everyone feels the impact. This priest steps carefully through the waters on his way to conduct a funeral. The higher the king tides get, the harder it is to keep things going here. So can you grow anything here?
No.
Because it's too salty?
Yeah, too salty.
Okay. The seawater is poisoning the soil and people are nervous.
It makes me feel scary. So what will happen to us in 10 years' time?
This isn't like other floods that I've covered with a single catastrophic event. Instead, it's a creeping process with this seawater flowing up into the heart of these islands and slowly, but effectively, killing them off. The water bubbles up in tiny streams, and everywhere you look, it just lies on the surface. And the problem is getting worse. At the harbour, the rising swell is monitored by an Australian system. The measurements go back 15 years. And at the local Met Office, they say the king tides are getting higher, a trend forecast to continue.
In prediction, the next 5 to 10 years, the king tide is getting worse and getting higher than normal. Then most of the coastal areas will be washed out.
The implications are alarming. A typical high tide reaches about 2.5 meters. A king tide like now can be more than 3. The UN Climate Panel forecasts a rise of another ½ metre, when the highest point is only about 4.5 metres. Now for Tuvalu, each scenario would cost precious land. Only a small rise would see parts of the island go under, perhaps even the runway, a lifeline to the outside world. How long have you got?
Not more than 50 years. In fact, some of the islands have already disappeared. Please help us. You cause climate change. You know, the polluter pays principle must apply. You must set up a global fund to which these islands can come and tap into to build their resilience, to build their capacity, their education, technology, and all that, and restore what the damage has been done.
People here say there must be a technological fix if a rich country like Dubai can build entirely new islands, especially since these are so narrow you can cross from one side to the other in a few short paces. The problem? They're founded on coral, which is porous. Saving these islands will cost a fortune. For the children of Tuvalu, the floods are fun. But for them to lead their lives on these islands will require massive international support. And with just 11,000 people here, will the outside world think it's worth it?
Now, of course, Tuvalu does get some aid, but not nearly enough to keep the rising sea at bay. So the international community faces very soon a difficult choice of whether to draw a line between those who get saved and those who don't. And in the meantime, people here are getting ready for another king tide. Right now it's low. It's due to get very high in about 8 hours' time. Back to you in the studio.
David, thank you very much. David Shukman there, our environment correspondent in Tuvalu.